They told us pain didn't have to hurt anymore. They told us a revolutionary new medication could give suffering patients their lives back without the risk of addiction. Doctors believed it, patients trusted it, and Purdue Pharma made billions selling that lie. By the time the truth caught up, opioid epidemic had killed hundreds of thousands.
Fentanyl is taking the opioid epidemic to a new level. Fentanyl
more potent than heroin.
Another drug is surging.
Fentanyl, so potent you could die with the syringe still in your arm.
About 806,000 people have died from opioid overdoses in the US since 1999. Communities were destroyed, families were shattered, and the opioid crisis had become the deadliest drug epidemic in American history. So how did one pharmaceutical company convince an entire nation that highly addictive narcotics were safe? How did marketing turn medicine into a weapon? Let's walk through the wreckage. Purdue Pharma didn't start as a villain. It started in 1892 as a small medical supply company in Manhattan. By the 1950s, it was owned by three brothers, Arthur, Mortimer, and Raymond Sackler. They weren't street dealers, they were doctors, psychiatrists actually, and Arthur Sackler had a particular gift that would reshape the entire pharmaceutical industry. He understood advertising. Arthur Sackler helped pioneer modern pharmaceutical marketing, especially the playbook for selling directly to physicians. He sent sales reps straight into doctors' offices, bought up medical journals, and filled them with ads. In doing so, he created the playbook the industry still uses today. By the time he died in 1987, he had built an empire, but the fortune that would make the Sackler name infamous had yet to come. In 1995, the FDA approved OxyContin. In 1996, Purdue launched it nationwide. It was oxycodone, a powerful opioid in the same class of drugs as morphine and heroin, but Purdue insisted it was different. The drug used a time-release formula that was supposed to deliver steady pain relief over 12 hours. And critically, they claimed it was less addictive than other opioids. That claim was based on almost nothing. There was a single paragraph in a 1980 letter to the New England Journal of Medicine that suggested opioids might be less addictive when used for pain management. It wasn't a study, it wasn't peer-reviewed research, it was 5 sentences, but Purdue cited it over 600 times in their marketing materials. The FDA approved OxyContin with a label that said the time-release formula was believed to reduce the abuse potential. That one sentence gave Purdue everything they needed. They weren't just selling a painkiller anymore, they were selling safety, and they sold it hard. Purdue launched one of the most aggressive pharmaceutical marketing campaigns of its era. They hired hundreds of sales representatives, expanding their sales force from about 300 to roughly 670 by 2000. They weren't just salespeople. They were trained in detailed scripts designed to downplay addiction risks and maximize prescriptions. They carried charts, studies, and glossy brochures. They had one target: doctors. The reps focused on primary care physicians, not specialists. Family doctors who treated back pain, arthritis, post-surgery recovery. Doctors who weren't experts in addiction medicine. Doctors who trusted what pharmaceutical companies told them. And Purdue told them OxyContin was safe for moderate pain, not just severe cancer pain. This was the key manipulation. In the past, strong opioids were used only for extreme cases like terminal cancer or severe trauma. Purdue changed that. They argued that chronic pain was undertreated across America. As pain was increasingly treated as a fifth vital sign, Purdue exploited that shift and positioned opioids as a standard solution for long-term pain. The sales reps came with incentives. Doctors who prescribed higher doses got more visits, more attention, more perks. Purdue tracked prescriptions by physician and rewarded top prescribers with speaking fees and consulting contracts. Some doctors made hundreds of thousands of dollars promoting OxyContin at medical conferences. Purdue poured money into promotion, about $200 million in 2001 alone, and funded more than 20,000 pain education programs between 1996 and 2002. They created patient advocacy groups that pushed for better pain treatment. They sponsored continuing medical education courses that taught doctors the myths about opioid addiction, and it worked spectacularly. OxyContin sales went from $48 million in 1996 to over $1.1 billion by 2000. By 2010, OxyContin was generating about $3.1 billion a year. Purdue had become a cash printing machine. The Sackler family was pulling in hundreds of millions in profits every year. They bought art collections, funded museum wings, and put their name on universities. They were philanthropists, respected, untouchable. But on the ground, something horrific was happening. Patients who took OxyContin as prescribed were getting addicted. The 12-hour time-release formula didn't work for everyone. For many patients, the effect wore off after 8 hours. They'd experience withdrawal symptoms, sweating, anxiety, pain that felt worse than before. So they'd take another pill early, and another. Doctors, pressured by patient complaints and trained by Purdue to be aggressive with dosing, prescribed higher strengths. The addiction cycle was vicious. Patients who ran out prescriptions early started doctor shopping, visiting multiple physicians to get more pills. When doctors cut them off, they turned to the black market. On the street, OxyContin pills sold for high prices, often tens of dollars per pill. And when people couldn't afford that, they discovered something cheaper and stronger: heroin. The progression was predictable. Prescription OxyContin led to crushed pills for faster highs, crushed pills led to heroin led to fentanyl, and fentanyl led to death. Overdoses exploded across America. Rural communities got hit first and hardest. Small towns in Appalachia, the Rust Belt, New England, places where manufacturing jobs had disappeared and economic despair was everywhere, OxyContin filled the void. Entire towns became addicted. Emergency rooms were overwhelmed. Foster care systems collapsed as parents lost custody. Crime rates soared. By the early 2000s, overdose deaths linked to prescription opioids were climbing fast. But that was only the first wave. By 2017, more than 47,000 Americans were dying from opioid overdoses each year. Since 1999, the total has surpassed 800,000 deaths in the United States. First driven by prescription pills, then heroin, and now illicit fentanyl. It's a death toll on the scale of America's largest national tragedies. And Purdue knew. They absolutely knew. Internal documents later revealed that by 2000, Purdue executives were aware of widespread abuse. Sales reps reported doctors running pill mills where patients lined up like it was a drive-through. The company tracked regions with suspiciously high prescription rates. They knew OxyContin was being crushed and snorted, and they did nothing. In fact, they doubled down. When reports of abuse emerged, Purdue blamed the victims. They pushed the narrative that addiction only happened to people who misused the drug, people with addictive personalities. The company created materials suggesting that pain patients who became addicted were probably drug seekers all along. It was a masterclass in deflection. The first major legal crack appeared in 2007. The U.S. Department of Justice filed criminal charges against Purdue and 3 executives. The company pleaded guilty to misbranding OxyContin by claiming it was less addictive than other opioids. They paid $634 million in fines. That sounds like a lot, but by then, OxyContin had already generated billions in revenue. The penalty was manageable, and the bigger point was what did not happen. No executives went to prison. 3 senior leaders paid $34.5 million in personal penalties and received community service, then moved on. And the Sacklers, who owned and controlled the company, were not criminally charged in that case. It also did not end there. In 2020, Purdue pleaded guilty again, this time to federal crimes involving fraud and illegal kickbacks. After 2007, you'd think Purdue would change course. They didn't. OxyContin sales continued to climb. The marketing became slightly more subtle, but the strategy remained the same. Maximize prescriptions, downplay risks, and when criticism mounted, Purdue pivoted to a new argument. The addiction crisis was caused by illegal drugs, not prescription medication. It was gaslighting on a national scale. By 2017, the crisis was impossible to ignore. States started filing lawsuits. Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey released documents showing that the Sackler family had directly pushed for more aggressive sales tactics even after the 2007 guilty plea. Emails revealed Richard Sackler, who ran the company, demanding his team hammer on abusers in marketing materials. The lawsuits piled up, thousands of them. Cities, counties, states, Native American tribes, hospitals, and individuals all sued Purdue for damages. The company was facing over 2,600 lawsuits by 2019. In September 2019, Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy. But this wasn't a normal bankruptcy. This was a strategic move designed to protect the Sackler family's fortune. Early versions of the deal contemplated the Sacklers paying roughly $4 to $6 billion in exchange for broad legal releases, until the Supreme Court shut that structure down in 2024. Let that sink in. The family had taken out over $10 billion from Purdue between 2008 and 2018 alone. They'd transferred money to offshore accounts and trusts, and now they're offering back less than half while demanding legal protection forever. Victims' families were outraged. Protesters showed up at museums bearing the Sackler name, demanding the family's donations be returned. Institutions started removing the Sackler name from buildings. The Louvre, the Met, Tufts University all distanced themselves. The bankruptcy settlement was controversial and went through multiple revisions. In June 2024, the U.S. Supreme Court blocked Purdue's earlier deal because it would have granted sweeping legal releases to the Sacklers. In November 2025, a revised plan was approved with opt-in releases. The Sacklers have admitted no wrongdoing. They've expressed regret for the crisis, while insisting they acted legally and ethically. It's a remarkable position to hold when the epidemic tied to opioids has killed over 800,000 Americans since 1999. What's the lesson here? It's not just about one evil company. It's about a system that allowed this to happen. The FDA approved OxyContin based on weak evidence. Medical boards didn't question the sudden surge in opioid prescribing. Insurance companies paid for pills but not for addiction treatment. And the government was slow, catastrophically slow to respond. Purdue Pharma exploited every weakness in American healthcare. They turned pain management into profit management. They convinced doctors that compassion meant prescribing more drugs. They created patient dependency and called it care. And for years, much of it sat inside the gray zone of industry norms, until prosecutors and courts proved otherwise. That's the truly terrifying part. Until the lawsuits, almost everything Purdue did was within the bounds of pharmaceutical industry norms. Aggressive marketing, incentivized prescribing, minimizing side effects. These were standard practices. Purdue just perfected them. The opioid crisis isn't over. Since 1999, more than 800,000 Americans have died from opioid overdoses. And today, most of those deaths involve illicit fentanyl. But the chain reaction didn't start on the street. It started with prescription pills, with OxyContin, with Purdue. In November 2025, bankruptcy judge confirmed a plan to dissolve Purdue and transfer its assets to a new public benefit company, knoapharma, overseen by an independent foundation to fund abatement and provide treatment and overdose reversal medicines. The Sacklers remain wealthy, and their legal protections are limited and tied to opt-in settlement releases. The museums have taken down the names, the lawsuits have been settled, but the bodies keep piling up. Because Purdue Pharma didn't just sell a drug, they reshaped how America thinks about pain, treatment, and pharmaceutical trust. And we're still living in the world they created. Hundreds of thousands didn't die because of one molecule alone. They died because a system let marketing overpower risk, and that's a legacy no settlement can erase. If you want to learn about another company that put profits over people and paid the price, check out the video above, and don't forget to like and subscribe.